right, now that we're ready to paint, you guys are going to be using tempered cakes, and remember, you're only using the primary colors. We talked about how all of the three primary colors make all of the other colors, and you guys are going to actually do that to create your rainbow drip. Okay, so let's get started. Everybody's gonna need their tempered cakes, you're gonna need a brush and a bucket of water, and eventually you'll need a mixing cup, a paper towel, and I think that's it. Okay, so when you're picking a brush to paint, you don't want to pick a brush that's too small. Okay, so this one's really, really tiny. And if I try to paint with this one, it is going to take me a million years to paint my project, right? And then you also don't want to pick one that's too big either, right? So this one, it is a really nice brush and might work for some people, but the bristles are almost as wide as all of my sections, and so I'm not going to be able to control my paint within all of those sections. So we want to pick something between these two, okay? So something like one of these brushes would work great. And notice that I'm picking all brushes that have a flat end. These brushes are gonna really help us get right up against the edge of all of our sections that we're gonna be painting in. So I'm gonna pick this red one. Whichever flat bristle brush like this that you guys wanna pick would be great. And I'm gonna have you guys first start off painting your primary colors. So let's everybody start off painting the color yellow. Never ever trust that the last person that used that brush cleaned it out well enough, so you always wanna start cleaning the brushes before you put it in paint. Also, tempered cakes need need water to be activated, so your brush needs to be wet. Let's go over how to properly clean your brush. So you wanna take your brush and you wanna bounce it off the bottom of the container. Notice that when I'm doing this, you don't hear any tapping, okay? That's important because if you tap your brush, a lot of times water, or if there's paint on your brush, it will go flying off the end and it will get all over everybody at your table, maybe even on their artwork. So that's no good. So we never ever wanna do that. We also don't wanna swirl the water around in the bucket because typically water will come flying out of the sides, also not good. So like I said, you wanna bounce it off the bottom. And when you do this, it gets all the paint out of the bristles, okay? So I'm just bouncing it off the bottom. And then if I have too much water, I can just kind of put it on the side, kind of like brush my brush on the side of the bucket or onto my paper towel, okay? But I need that extra water because like I said, we need water to activate the tempered cakes. So I'm gonna start over here with yellow. So I'm gonna swirl my brush on top of the yellow tempera, and then I'm gonna go from yellow, then I'm gonna paint red, then I'm gonna paint blue. We're always gonna go lightest to darkest, and when you guys go to paint in your sections, pay attention to your color labels. Once the color is painted on your paper, I cannot magically remove it. So there are some little fixes here and there and tricks that I can do to help you, but it's really the best if you just pay attention to your color wheel, take your time, and paint in those sections that we labeled. Okay, remember, the order matters. So I want you to notice that as I'm doing this, I'm just using the flat side of my brush, I'm just dragging it along, and if I get in a tight spot, I'm using the end of my brush to go up against the edge of that section to keep my paint nice and neat in that section. I go back, I'm gonna make sure if there are any little white spaces in this section, I'm gonna go back and paint them. I'm gonna leave any white sections on our drip. Everything looks good in yellow. I can now clean my brush. You always want to clean your brush before you stick it back in the tempered cakes. So there's no more paint on my brush. The next color, like I said, that we're gonna do is red. So my brush is clean. I'm gonna swirl my brush on the red here in the container. I'm gonna make sure I locate the correct section. So here's where I labeled red. I can even put a little mark there and a little mark there so that I know where I'm going. If you feel like you need to turn your paper to make it more comfortable for you, feel free to do that, okay? All right, so now I'm gonna use the flat end of my brush. Really paint carefully, go up against the edge. and fill in all the white spaces. It is not a race who gets done first. Painting and you have too much water on your brush, take a second, put your brush on your paper towel, get that excess water off, and then continue to paint. You want to be in control of the paint at all times, and if you have too much liquid on your brush, sometimes it's hard to control it. I'm done with red. I'm going to clean my brush and go to blue. Turn your paper so you're not sticking your arm in wet paint. Feel free to do that. Take your time. If you need to switch brushes because this section's a little smaller, feel free to do that. Right, so now that we're done painting the